They didn't fire a missile. They didn't issue a warning. But in that silent moment over the Caribbean, the world came closer to war than anyone realized. Two Venezuelan Su-30 fighter jets were screaming low over the ocean. Weapons armed, radar locked, aimed directly at a United States aircraft carrier. A floating city of steel, nuclear-powered, surrounded by escorts. And for a few seconds, completely exposed. Here's the part that should make your stomach drop. The US Navy didn't react the way you think. No alarms, no missiles launched, no jets scrambling in panic. Because in modern naval warfare scenario analysis, the deadliest move isn't pulling the trigger. It's letting your enemy believe they're in control. While those pilots believed they were hunting a carrier, something else was happening quietly, invisibly, across hundreds of miles of ocean. A decision was made that would end the confrontation before a single shot was fired. And the Venezuelan pilots had no idea they were already losing. The Venezuelan pilots thought this was their moment. Years of training had led to this exact scenario. As their Su-30s dropped from high altitude to just a few hundred feet above the Caribbean, they slipped into what pilots call the radar shadow, using the ocean itself as cover. It's a classic carrier hunting tactic, designed to delay detection until it's too late to stop the attack. On paper, it should have worked. Each jet carried anti-ship missiles built to tear through destroyers and cripple aircraft, carriers, supersonic, sea-skimming, designed to give defending ships seconds, not minutes, to react. But here's the twist. No one tells you about naval warfare scenario analysis. Detection doesn't start when the enemy appears on radar. It starts days earlier. Long before these jets ever took off, American systems were already tracking patterns, radio chatter, flight prep signals, command activity. When the Su-30s lifted off, the carrier strike group wasn't surprised. They were waiting, and deep inside the strike group's combat center, a single data change triggered a response that would never appear on public radar screens. Inside the carrier strike group, the atmosphere was calm, almost unsettlingly calm. Screens lit the combat information center with a three-dimensional map of the Caribbean, stretching hundreds of miles in every direction. Every aircraft, every ship, every anomaly. Nothing moved without being seen. As the two Su-30s slipped lower, their flight path drew a familiar pattern on American displays. Attack profile confirmed. Weapons ready posture. No ambiguity. The system automatically generated firing solutions. Surface-to-air missiles stood ready. Interceptors could have been launched in under a minute. But in naval warfare scenario analysis, the most dangerous choice is often restraint. The strike group commander paused, not because of hesitation, but because escalation was exactly what the enemy expected. Instead of missiles, a different order went out, quiet, precise, almost surgical. 3 aircraft on the carrier's deck were cleared for launch. Not fighters, not bombers, electronic warfare platforms. As they lifted into the sky, the Venezuelan pilots still believed they were closing in on a single massive target. They had no idea that in the next few moments, reality itself was about to fracture around them. At first, nothing seemed wrong inside the Venezuelan cockpits. The sea was calm. The carrier should have been right ahead. Then the radar started lying. 1 blip became 2, 2 became 6. Suddenly, the Venezuelan pilots were staring at something impossible. Multiple aircraft carriers, appearing where there should only be one. Their threat displays flickered. Missile lock tones cut in and out. Navigation data drifted by miles. This wasn't simple jamming. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is called reality manipulation. Advanced electronic warfare systems don't block signals, they rewrite them. Every radar pulse sent by the Su-30s was captured, altered, and sent back as a carefully engineered illusion. To the pilots, the battlefield had turned into chaos. Targets jumped positions, ghost aircraft materialized. Distance readings made no sense. And while they struggled to understand what was happening, something far more dangerous was already moving into place, completely unseen. Because the most lethal aircraft in the sky doesn't announce itself. It waits. While the Venezuelan pilots fought their own instruments, 4 American jets were already there. They didn't show up on radar. They didn't trigger warnings. They didn't exist, at least not on Venezuelan screens. Stealth fighters slid into position from different angles. forming a perfect invisible trap. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is called a kill box, a space where the enemy is surrounded without knowing it. From just a few miles away, American pilots could see everything: heat signatures, engine output, pilot movements inside the cockpit. One wrong move from the Su-30s and the engagement would have been over in seconds. But no missiles were fired. Instead, the Americans held position, locking simulated weapons and recording every second of the encounter. Proof evidence, a silent message. The Venezuelan flight leader felt it before he understood it. The sensation that you're no longer hunting but being hunted. And that realization forced a decision no pilot ever wants to make in hostile airspace. The lead Venezuelan pilot made a choice that likely saved both crews' lives. He disengaged his weapons radar, then slowly, deliberately, he rolled his wings. In aviation, that gesture means one thing: I am not hostile. His wingman followed instantly, dumping speed and turning away from the carrier. Afterburners ignited, fuel burning at a terrifying rate as they raced back toward their airspace. But the encounter wasn't over. The American stealth fighters stayed with them, close enough to be seen, but never heard. A silent escort, a psychological message far louder than any radio transmission. For dozens of miles, the Su-30 pilots flew knowing they were exposed, outmatched, and completely dependent on American restraint. This is the part most people misunderstand about naval warfare scenario analysis. Victory isn't measured by destruction, it's measured by control. And the United States had just demonstrated total control, without firing a single shot. What waited for those jets when they landed would confirm just how badly things had gone wrong. When the Venezuelan Su-30s finally touched down, the pilots expected relief. They didn't get it. Ground crews rushed the aircraft almost immediately, not for refueling, but for diagnostics. What the systems reported was alarming. Radar faults, navigation failures, communication dropouts, error after error cascading across the displays. According to the manuals, this wasn't supposed to be possible. These jets were marketed as resistant to advanced electronic attack, hardened, protected, reliable under pressure. Yet in a matter of minutes, their most critical systems had unraveled without a single missile strike. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is the moment where theory meets reality. Hardware means nothing if your enemy can reach inside your sensors and twist what you see. The pilots filed their reports in silence, knowing something uncomfortable. They hadn't just been intercepted. They had been studied, and every second of that encounter was already being analyzed somewhere, far beyond the Caribbean, because this incident wasn't over. It was only beginning to ripple outward. Within hours, military analysts across multiple countries were quietly reviewing the data. No press releases, no dramatic statements, just careful recalculations, because this encounter rewrote assumptions. For years, many believed that modern naval battles would be decided by speed and firepower, faster missiles, heavier payloads, more aggressive tactics. But this confrontation told a different story. In naval warfare scenario analysis, the decisive factor is information dominance. Who sees first? Who understands first? Who controls the narrative inside the battle space? The Venezuelan jets never lost because they were slower or weaker. They lost because they were never truly in the fight. And somewhere deep inside strategic planning rooms, one uncomfortable question began to circulate. If this could happen without a single shot, what would happen if the gloves came off? For the Venezuelan leadership, the encounter was a brutal lesson in modern military reality. They had invested hundreds of millions in aircraft, missiles, and training. Yet the most sophisticated hardware in their arsenal had been rendered nearly useless, not by bullets, but by invisible electronic dominance. In naval warfare scenario analysis, this is the ultimate lesson. Technological superiority isn't enough. You must also understand the unseen battlefield, the digital, psychological, and tactical layers that define who truly controls an engagement. The pilots returned, shaken but unharmed. The carrier strike group remained in position, its presence a quiet but unmistakable warning, a demonstration that dominance is not always measured in explosions or destroyed assets. Sometimes it's measured in restraint, anticipation, and control. Across the Caribbean, the message was clear: challenging a superpower comes at a cost. Even the most carefully calculated attacks can unravel in ways the aggressor never imagined. But what happened next, beyond the initial confrontation, would leave the entire naval world talking. In the days that followed, military analysts dissected every moment of the encounter. Reports showed the Su-30s had logged dozens of system anomalies, from radar failures to navigation blackouts, errors that Russian engineers had once claimed were impossible. The encounter proved a truth rarely acknowledged outside classified circles. In modern naval warfare scenario analysis, the most powerful weapon isn't missiles or guns. It's control of information, mastery of technology, and psychological dominance over your opponent. The Venezuelan pilots had trained for years, spent millions on hardware, and believed themselves ready for war. Yet in the blink of an eye, they discovered that preparation alone was never enough. The United States demonstrated not destruction, but deterrence. Not aggression, but calculated mastery of the battlefield. And that silent confrontation over the Caribbean became a case study in modern warfare. A reminder that in the 21st century, victory often belongs to those who see first, understand first, and act with perfect precision without firing a single shot. If you want more breakdowns of military encounters that changed everything, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and comment which scenario we should analyze next.